What's up YouTube? A lot of people are asking me about my experience with the Fuji X-T2, how I feel it's coming along, do I think it's ready for pro work? So I'm going to discuss the pros and cons today. I've now shot 4 weddings with the Fuji X-T2 in addition to my Nikon gear, and here's my overall thoughts. The autofocus is on par with the DSLR. It's as quick in AFS, and it's not quite as fast in AFC, but it is equally accurate. So you just have to watch and be a little bit more aware of when your key times to shoot are, or shoot a little bit more frequently. But overall, I think that it's pretty much the same experience in terms of focus. Now this goes in low light and in good lighting. In low light, sometimes this is actually a little bit better. It has that gain in the viewfinder, and you can find contrasty spots to focus on a little bit easier. So overall, I think it's right on par with the DSLR. The other benefit is that since it's the same autofocus system in both the viewfinder and the LCD, if you are someone who likes to use a lot of LCD previews, or to go high, to go low, just live view, macro shots, I use it all the time, and that's a way better experience on the X-T2 than it is on a DSLR. Autofocus points on the DSLR, like the D750, are so slow to go around the screen and everything. And on this, you have the same high-speed movement across the frame to kind of get to your different focus points, and that is way, way superior to DSLRs, at least any that I've used. So +1 for that. A little bit slower in the continuous autofocus speed. The raw files are outstanding. The recoverability is huge. You can just go so far. If you have a really, really underexposed image, you can bring it up. There's so much room in the shadows. A little bit more room in the highlights than the Nikon, a little bit less in the shadows, but comparatively they're just like on par with the D750 in terms of how much you can recover. The ISO invariance leaves you a lot of room for error, or if that's just kind of part of your style to do file pushing, it's going to really help you out with that. Now Lightroom is a little bit weird with these files, especially in terms of rendering the detail. I find that when I go from like 1:1 to a full screen view, that the sharpening just looks crazy for this like split second. Adobe could do a little bit better to optimize Lightroom for Fuji performance, so hopefully we see some updates for that in the future. Ergonomics. With the grip, I love it. Without the grip, it's not the greatest experience in the world. I find myself having to rest kind of on my pinky, whereas with the grip, both vertical, horizontal, I love it. Absolutely fits my hand really well, and that's been what I hear from most people, is that they really like how it feels in their hand. Button layout is phenomenal, very intuitive. You can get to everything really quickly. Having the functionality to customize so many different points, it's definitely more than my D750. I'm pretty much staying out of the menus almost entirely, except for a few options that I go to. Changing the autofocus points from the 90 to 325. I kind of flip between those all day. But other than that, I'm pretty much on the body at all times. And it's really good to stay out of those menus because those slow you down. The battery life, I thought it was going to be way worse than the way people made it out to be. People are saying that the battery life is terrible on these, and you're going to need a 12-pack of batteries, but I'm shooting 700 shots on a battery. Now I'm using the EVF Plus sensor, so basically it's going in the EVF when my eye is up to it. As soon as I take it away, it's not displaying on the EVF or the LCD. So that kind of cut down on my battery usage quite a bit. I know the first day that I used it, I only got like 450 shots out of one battery, so that helped a lot. And then whenever I need to use the LCD, I just hit the view mode button, flip to LCD real quick, and then put it back in EVF Plus sensor. When I'm done, you quickly kind of memorize how many clicks it is, and yeah, you'll be able to cut down on your battery usage quite a bit. But 3 weddings gets me through a wedding no problem. In fact, I'm never even getting to the 3rd battery. If I was using it fully without any Nikon gear, I would probably want to have about 4 batteries to get me through a wedding, but I'm a little bit tighter of a shooter than I know most people are. I know some people shoot 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 shots on a wedding, and if I break 2, it's a click heavy day. The electronic shutter, I absolutely love the electronic shutter. I use that as much as I can throughout the day. Pretty much if I'm not using light, I'm using the electronic shutter because A, it's quieter, only I can hear myself take a photo, or I can make it completely silent. B, I'm not putting any wear on the actual mechanical shutter in the camera, which is cool. Like using your camera all day and not putting excess wear on it, especially in weddings where you take a ton of photos. That's been awesome. And I've also found that I get a little bit more leeway when I'm using my electronic shutter. The church staff at the church on the first day that I used this, when I actually showed them that my camera didn't make a sound, they were like, oh, you can go up further than we originally told you. You know, that's fine. You're not going to be making any noise. Like no one's going to notice you as much. And then in general, how people react with one another. If you're not actually sitting there clicking in their face, they don't hear a sound. They don't really associate so much with big professional camera in my face. Like, you know, there's this, as long as you're comfortable with everybody and not being a weirdo, they can just kind of gel with you being there. And yeah, you can kind of get some reactions that I think otherwise you would have had people react and kind of change what they're doing, or, you know, the infamous, oh, there's a camera, we need to smile, when what you really want is that authentic interaction between people. It's really beneficial for that. Which brings me to the electronic viewfinder. The thing that I was most excited about with this camera is been wonderful. It's been the best thing about this camera. First off, we got the what you see is what you get factor. All day I'm going through, I see a live preview of my image before I take it, which means I don't have to look at that photo after. I already know what it's gonna look like. This also had this benefit that I didn't really think about, where I'm seeing a live representation all day of whatever I choose with my settings, so I can kind of experiment really quickly to see if my visualizations will work or not. So if I'm thinking, oh, that spot's really cool because of that contrast, let me see if that dynamic range is going to work to kind of get, you know, this all black area or anything like that, and if there'll still be enough light left for the subject. So that's been really, really cool. Instead of testing shots all day, I can just quickly visualize something with my settings and verify whether or not it's going to work, and then, you know, attack it appropriately. Now, my first night with the camera, I was in a very dark reception, and I had to introduce off-camera lighting to get any type of quality images. So I experimented and used my Fuji with the same set of settings and flashes that I was using on my Nikon, and that left me with an extremely dark preview because we were now using flashlight instead of ambient light. Well, all I had to do was turn off my exposure preview, and now I've got night vision essentially to go around and shoot the reception with. So I knew my settings were good for the dance floor and all the, you know, romantic dances, the formal dances. I knew that my results were going to be good. I just needed to be able to see, and I found the focusing to be a little bit easier on the X-T2 over my Nikon D750 because I had that really bright viewpoint of everything, and I could really dial in and find areas of contrast quickly with a small focus point and get accurate pinpoint focus. Now, finding the point that I wanted to focus on was a little bit faster on the X-T2, but I will say that the D750 might have performed a tiny bit better. It was a different experience. The D750 was catching focus quicker, but it wasn't as accurate, whereas this was more accurate, but it took longer to get there. So as long as you can adjust your approach to either situation, which I was comfortable doing in a minute, this is no problem whatsoever in dark areas. I absolutely thought that this would work for every point of a dark day. I was in a dark church, dark reception, and this thing kept up. And that was on my first day of use that I was finding success in every situation. You know, sometimes you identify a body's weakness, you got to kind of come back to it, but I was getting it all sorted out right there on the spot and had a really positive experience. And finally, one thing I didn't think about is shooting in black and white. I love to kind of switch my camera, especially I did this on the D750 a lot. I would switch my camera's review to, or the preview, I guess you could say, of the JPEG. I would switch it to black and white so that I could focus on the tonality of an image rather than the colors, not see all the colors, just focus on, hey, how does my light look in this situation? And with this, I can actually preview everything in black and white and pre-visualize in black and white because I see everything in black and white live. And that, for me at least, is a dream. It's something I've always liked to do to my images, just to have that focus all day on light as opposed to color. And you have that freedom since you've got great color accuracy with auto white balance, and you also have raw files, so you know that you can adjust it as needed later. But shooting in black and white, focusing on light all day, beautiful, beautiful experience, and might be my favorite thing about the electronic viewfinder. One thing I do want to touch on is ergonomics of the lenses. While I found the ergonomics of the body great, I find these lenses a pain in the ass to change. You're either, these caps are just kind of a little oddly snug. B, putting them on the body, you just have to really pinpoint your where your fingers are going to be tight on, because otherwise when you try to turn it, you're just turning these rings. And I found that the f-stop ring is a little bit too sensitive, or too loose, I guess you could say, on some lenses more than others. But I did find that I just pick up my body after just bringing it down to my hip, and then I adjust something, bring it back up, and boom, I'm at F10 for no reason. It just got rubbed as I went down or as I held it. I'm sure my hand will start to tend to avoid it, but if you're setting it down and it just flips your settings like crazy, that's a little bit annoying. And then the lens hood. Sometimes if you want to introduce flare and stuff like that, you want to take your lens hood off, flip it around so that you don't have to hold it or set it anywhere. And when you do that on a lot of these lenses, you end up getting into the area of completely covering your focus ring area, and then you're kind of restricting your access to the f-stop, especially when you're holding it like that. It's a little less accurate. Not so much on the 90 millimeter. Oh yeah, I bought the 90 millimeter. That lens is awesome. But yeah, changing the lens is kind of a pain in the butt. I don't like this manual autofocus thing on the 23 millimeter. A lot of people are telling me to check out the f2 versions of, I think, the 23 millimeter and the 35 millimeter. And I'm fine with these. These aren't slowing me down at all, so I'm just gonna keep the 1.4 versions, but everyone else is basically in love with those lenses. So if you're interested in the system, I would consider checking out the f2 versions that everyone is speaking so highly of. Is it ready for pro use? Yeah, it's there. It's completely there. There's a few things to get used to. There's a few mental adjustments to make, but in terms of what it offers with the EVF and control and silence, and the quality of files right out of the gate, I think that it's a very smooth transition. Like I said, I had this body for a few days and I brought it to a wedding thinking, oh, maybe I'll try it out, and I ended up shooting like 800 shots because it was just A, instantly intuitive and easy to use, and B, I was just so in love with what it was producing. So I definitely think it's there. It's ready for pro use. I'll be fully adopting the system as soon as quality lighting products are available. I've gotten too used to the high-speed sync and TTL and full radio control between 6 different lights. I love that stuff. You guys know I love my lighting. So I'll be adopting the Fuji system fully, purchasing a second body, finishing out the lenses and everything when that comes out. But I don't think I'm going to get rid of my Nikon gear, at least not all of it. I think I'm going to keep a few things around just so I can kind of stick with it, communicate with people who are using Nikon gear, and it's extra cameras. I can always use extra cameras. I'm definitely ready to use this full time. I'll let you guys know continuing thoughts. I really wanted to get these in-depth comparison videos between this stuff and the Nikon stuff, but I'm just swamped trying to keep my client stuff up to date before we take off to Europe in 6 days. So fortunately, I don't think I'm going to get those out to you guys, but I did want to get this quick video about my thoughts. So I don't know. If you have any questions, let me know. Take it easy, guys. Hey guys, I was just finishing up, but I wanted to answer something that somebody had asked me in particular, because it was something that I was really concerned about with this body. Somebody asked, here is the speed of the autofocus point, kind of how fast it travels. It's pretty darn quick. Now this is with the 325 autofocus points. If I actually switch it to the 91, which is perfectly usable, it actually obviously increases the speed quite a bit. It's very fast to get around, and I love that it wraps around But yeah, just wanted to answer that question. Another great perk of the body. It's super quick for the autofocusing.